So, Luke, have you been following the hearings concerning the appointment of Judge Amy Coney Barrett?
I have indeed, Michael. I have indeed. Those hearings have led us to today talk about one Diane Feinstein, senator from the great state of California. We are going to be discussing her today because she made some news on the Hill, as they say, while she was doing the hearings for Amy Coney Barrett, questioning her and so forth. And the reason why we're going to talk about her today, Michael, is because she encapsulates, in my opinion, and indeed yours as well, I think, everything that is wrong about this current Democratic Party. We need to talk first about the Republicans.
Yeah, we can't insult the Democrats before we insult the Republicans.
Exactly.
Because there is a issue many people might have with the very fact that these hearings are happening in the first place. And what issue is that, Luke?
That issue is hypocrisy. But here's the thing. Obviously, a seat opened up on the Supreme Court back in 2016, which was also an election year. I think everybody knows this by now. Justice Antonio Scalia died. He had a heart attack. Many Republicans thought Obama assassinated him.
Because he was like a 70-year-old guy who was overweight. How could he have died?
I know, how could he have died, right? But yeah, a seat opens up, but it's an election year, and the Republicans control the Senate. Republicans say, no, we cannot confirm anybody, not least Merrick Garland, who was, of course, the Obama appointment to that Supreme Court position, because, we got to let the American people decide. So the American people decide. It's Donald, well, they don't really, because, he got 3 million votes less, but just shows what a great electoral system this great country that is America has. So Trump wins. He nominates Neil Gorsuch. That was it. A couple of years later, Brett Kavanaugh. And now we're in an election year. RBG has died. The notorious RBG, actually, I should say, to give her a full title.
Yeah, wow.
And now, even though we're in an election year, the Republicans are saying, Michael, unbelievably, but no, that precedent just from 2016, it doesn't stand anymore, even though we have an election coming up.
Hold on a minute, Luke. I thought that Lindsey Graham said that if there was a Supreme Court vacancy open, we could use his words against him. He told us, he said, you can use my words against me. If in 2016 there's an opportunity for a Supreme Court nomination, I will not support it.
If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, and you could use my words against me, and you'd be absolutely right.
Are you saying that Lindsey Graham is a hypocrite, along with loads of other Republicans who went on record saying similar things?
Yes, I am, Michael. I am saying they are hypocrites. And to be fair, there was this guy, I think he's called Matt Walsh on Twitter, who he was incredibly honest, more honest than any other Republican. He was like, yeah, I didn't want Obama to fill the Scalia space with a liberal appointment because I'm a conservative, and I want Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump to fill this one because I'm a conservative. The hypocrisy thing has been well known with Republicans for ages, and credit to that guy for actually stating that right. Yeah, I don't care. I just want to win.
Well, I mean, Luke, you want to talk about people being almost impressively honest. Let's talk about one Richard Burr, who basically told volunteers that he would do everything possible in order to prevent Hillary Clinton, if she won, from being able to fulfill the Supreme Court vacancy. He also had Senator John McCain saying the similar thing. He said, I promise you we will be united against any Supreme Court nominee that Hillary Clinton, if she were president, would put up.
Wait. John McCain, resistance hero,
I know.
Saying that Hillary Clinton, after being democratically elected to be president, they were going to block her Supreme Court pick, even though their argument before that it's an election year would, be totally washed with. And we'd have to put up with 8 justices on the Supreme Court for the next 4 years.
Speaking of cucks who were insulted by Donald Trump, Ted Cruz recently mused that the Supreme Court maybe doesn't need a 9th justice. After all, there's no problem, even though it should be pointed out.
When did he say this?
He said it back in 2016. He said it on, so it would have been around November the 1st, 2016. He said that the Supreme Court maybe doesn't need a 9th justice. And this is very ironic, of course, because what we've been hearing recently, we need to have a Supreme Court nominee before the election, because having an even number of justices would just be terrible, because then the Supreme Court might be tied. I've certainly heard that a lot.
It's tied specifically because there's an election coming up. This is the very argument Cruz used, and he said there's going to be a contested election, which I don't know how he knows that before the election has actually happened, why this election is going to be contested, but somehow he thinks that. Yeah, the hypocrisy is, of course, stunning, and we all know it.
Yeah, but
and,
just to be a bit more broad, I've got
okay.
this final quote from this article. It's from Slate.com, although there's a similar article where I read from a bit in the New York Mag, Intelligenza, I think it's called. Richard Burr is not crazy. He's the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who's otherwise on the Hill just to do whatever North Carolina corporations ask him to do. If this is what he's saying and he means it, then that's probably the consensus view of the Senate Republican caucus. This is a big deal. And I agree, it is a big deal that you have Republicans saying, hey, you know what, blow this election year excuse. Even if Hillary Clinton wins, we're keeping it open for 4 years. And there seem to be, lots of people seriously saying that.
No, and that was definitely their intention. If they kept the Senate, which they did, leave it open for the next 4 years. And right now, if Hillary Clinton had won, we'd only have 7, because obviously Ginsburg would have died, and we would only have 7. So we would actually return back to an odd number, which I'm sure Ted Cruz would like. Well, of course, this isn't just about the hypocrisy of the Republicans, this video. This is about Diane Feinstein and her ineptitude. And one of the reasons why she is inept is because she isn't responding like the Republicans responded, and we'll get into that, but also because she is involved in the hearings of the judge in question, which is Amy Coney Barrett. And Amy Coney Barrett is, well, I would like to say one of a kind, but sadly in America I don't think that's the case. Yeah. She's a very, very conservative judge who repeatedly has made decisions in her, past judicial career, which really just, they're red flags. There are so many red flags, particularly on the issue of Roe versus Wade and abortion. And this is, of course, the big thing, which as soon as RBG died, people were scared about Roe v. Wade, and they rightly should be, because most definitely now she's against it. Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Alito, Clarence Thomas, probably Roberts as well, all the conservative justices. I think if they get an opportunity to strike down Roe versus Wade, they're gonna. And Amy Coney Barrett is probably, out of all of them, maybe apart from Alito, the most sure thing to vote against Roe versus Wade if she has the opportunity.
Some of these judges, they have been reasonably okay. Like, it has been the case a lot of the time. Conservatives have appointed these conservative judges, and yet these conservative judges have been reasonable on some points, and people have gone, well, okay, that wasn't as terrible as it could be. But it sounds like this Amy Coney Barrett is a bit more concerning.
Yes, she also, in the hearings, by the way, she did not confirm that she thought Medicaid was constitutional. She hinted that she might think it's unconstitutional, and this is a program which has been around for decades, before she was even born. Yeah. So this is incredibly uncontroversial. And obviously she says there's debate about climate change. There's a debate about that. She's crazy. Obviously, we know that she can dress up her judicial philosophies in all these fancy words, like originalism.
Textualism, I think.
Textualism, yeah, all of this shit. But yeah, she's a wacko. She's crazy. And so in steps Diane Feinstein, the top Democrat on the judicial Senate hearings here. And what is her first question? What is her first question to Amy Coney Barrett? I was wondering if you could introduce us to your children and family.
They sit still, quiet. You've done a very good job.
I have eyes in the back of my head, so they know I'm watching.
I was wondering if you might introduce us to them.
Yes, I do remember that, actually.
The first question, that is what she did. The Republicans wrapped up the hearings on Amy Coney Barrett. Diane Feinstein praised Lindsey Graham, of course we noted before, was one of the
biggest hypocrites of the arch
biggest hypocrites. Yep. She said to him, I just want to thank you. This has been one of the best set of hearings that I've participated in.
What a lame thing. I tell you what, that's why we need Senate limits right there, Senate term limits right there, just to stop people saying things like that, because that's a sentence no one should ever say. This has been one of the best judiciary hearings I've ever been involved in.
Yeah, she is 87. She also finished by saying, thank you so much for your leadership. Saying that to Lindsey Graham. Lindsey, fucking thank you so much for your leadership. Yeah. When, the hypocrisy, just the amount of shit that Lindsey Graham has done in these last 4 years to praise the leadership, my God. And you contrast this to Ted Cruz, who is getting his own way, by the way, because the Republicans are getting another Supreme Court justice. What did he do, Michael?
Well, yeah, Ted Cruz literally, he stood up and he pretty much started for the first... to be honest, I stopped watching it after a while, but he was just railing into the Democrats. He said, basically accused the Democrats of being partisan. He pretty much, I guess he felt like he was really dunking and being like, they don't have any arguments against it. They've not had any real objections, even though there's been plenty of real objections. He said, they don't have any real objections. They're just being partisan. They're being awful. And he says most of them couldn't even be bothered to show up. Something like that.
It is striking that as we sit here right now in this committee room, There are only 2 Democratic senators in the room.
And, this other senator pipes up like, most of those people aren't here because they're concerned about, the virus, and they're actually watching this remotely. So you're pretty stupid, Anyway, yeah, basically that's what he did. He was just completely railing on him.
And that's another thing, by the way. Diane Feinstein hugged Lindsey Graham, and none of them were wearing masks, which, someone who's 87 years old,
yes,
is it's not the best thing to do, to be hugging people in a public forum indoors. So what Ted Cruz just did is a good example of how the Democrats should be acting, because you should be scrutinizing this radical right-wing judge and not trying to legitimize the hearings. I'm saying it's one of the best you've been a part of, or trying to be nice. That's the exact opposite of what you should be doing here. But that's the thing; it's not a one-off for Dianne Feinstein. Do you know the senator from Maine, Michael, Susan Collins?
Oh yeah, I've heard of her.
Yeah, she's been in a lot of news stories about, she's one of those Republicans, along with Ben Sass and Mitt Romney, who's very concerned about the president's language and rhetoric and all of that bullshit.
Yeah.
And, completely dishonest, just so deceitful. And this is what I got from an article in the New York Magazine. When asked whether she would like to see Susan Collins regain her seat in the 2020 Senate election in Maine, Dianne Feinstein of California replied, "Yes.
Wow.
I'm very fond of her. I consider her a friend. I trust her. I believe she's a good senator." I mean, just how can you say that?
Sorry. Was that Feinstein or was it Ted Cruz? Kind of confused.
Yeah, exactly. You would
was that one of the Republican senators who said that?
I think that would be a Republican, right? But that's Dianne Feinstein, one of the most prominent Democrats in the Senate, just being absolutely toothless. Coming from one of the biggest states in California, and one of the most prominent states in the country, probably the most prominent, maybe besides New York. And she's saying, "Yeah, I'm fond of this Republican senator from Maine who has consistently voted to uphold whatever Donald Trump wants to do and not condemn him in any significant way." And then also there was this thing that went viral last year with Dianne Feinstein. I don't know if you remember, but there's this movement called the Sunrise Movement. They're very concerned about climate change, and there's this absolutely great piece of, political theatre, maybe, a bunch of kids walking into Dianne Feinstein's office, protesting.
Yes,
and she gets into an argument with these kids and shouts at them, "I know what I am doing," in relation to climate change.
I just ran. I was elected by almost 1 million vote plurality.
Well, being an old woman, she's used to telling kids to get off her lawn.
Yeah.
It's just like that's that's what she does whenever the kids come over because they want their ball back. Like, get off of me!
Yeah, no,
she's an old woman.
Exactly that. And she got a lot of pushback from that. And of course, this time she has as well, which we'll get into later. But it's important to remember that Dianne Feinstein is not some sort of outsider who's a really moderate.
Yeah, well, to be honest, she just sounds like a female Obama at this point.
We'll get into that right now. So she is not alone on these issues. She's not this really moderate Democrat who is constantly out of step with her party by being too nice to the Republicans. Oh, no. Dianne...
Yeah, in a similar way to how Richard Burr is not out of step with his party by being obsessively partisan, Dianne Feinstein is not out of step with her party in being not at all partisan and constantly trying to be, the more moral, the better person, all that stuff.
Yes. In 2018, Dianne Feinstein faced a primary challenge for her seat in California. The next time she has an opportunity will be in 2024 to be challenged. So we've still got 4 more years of her, at least, unless the Rona gets her, which of course we don't hope for. But there's a possibility when she's hugging people without a mask. So what happened in 2018 was the entire California political establishment. This is Mayor Garcetti of Los Angeles, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who tweets stuff out like, "Climate change is real, guys." That's what he's meant to do.
Yeah.
As the governor, just inform people, by the way, that climate change is real.
Yeah. Well, what power does he have to do anything about it, Luke? He's just the governor.
He's just the governor, exactly. And also, now Vice President nominee Kamala Harris, Senator, the junior senator, also backed Dianne Feinstein, and they openly threatened any donor who wanted to give to her challenger, Kevin De Leon, in that Senate race. It was an example of wagon circling in politics, which was incredible to watch. And who is Kevin De Leon, Michael?
He's a nice guy.
Who is Kevin De Leon?
A real progressive. A real commie.
He's not actually that progressive, to be honest, which is the crazy thing, but he is the son of an undocumented Guatemalan immigrant and a teacher union organizer turned California State Senate leader. He challenged Feinstein in 2018, and Pelosi as well, backed Feinstein. Everyone did, against this guy who is, coming in, bringing fresh new blood to the Senate.
Yeah, I was going to say, who wants new blood?
That was the argument against Ed Markey, if you remember, with Joe Kennedy. Yeah, so in comes Kevin De Leon early on, nobody backs him, including, this is where we get to him, including Barack Obama. So here's what was incredibly interesting. In 2018, Obama only endorsed one Senate primary candidate.
Diane Feinstein.
It was, at the time, 85-year-old Diane Feinstein. The only person that in the Senate primaries he backed was Diane Feinstein. And of course, her opponent was a progressive Latina half her age, which, is fresh new blood, this young progressive ideals. Basically, what Obama, you would think, that was a person that Obama would back. But no, he didn't. And this is basically the point I'm trying to make. She comes from a very blue state, very prominent state, Democratic in California. You think, well, okay, if we back someone in West Virginia, who's a progressive, who's young, who's a Latina, to take out Joe Manchin, who was the Democratic senator from that state, well, we could lose. But the Democratic candidate is always going to win in California. And yet all of the California political establishment, and indeed Barack Obama, tried their best to keep her in charge.
But Luke, it's about electability. That's why we have to always be in a moderate centre-right party.
Yes.
Because of, electability.
Even in California. Yes, even in California.
Even when we're guaranteed to get elected, it's about electability.
Yes, oh God.
That's why we can never ever, we can't have progressives anymore.
I know.
Can't have Obamacare. We've got to get rid of it now because it's about electability.
And I don't know if anything will ever pierce through to regular liberals or progressive types about how bad Barack Obama actually is. But if they knew about this, hopefully that'd do it, because that is just absolutely shocking, that fact. But anyway, Michael, we need to get on to why this matters. Why does Dianne Feinstein's ineptitude, her inability to challenge and fight the Republicans matter? Because, well, we need to get on to the topic of court packing now.
Yes.
Yes, so explain to us what that means.
Well, the good news is that the Democrats right now have a decent chance of winning the presidency, as we covered in our last video, and they have a pretty reasonable chance as well of winning the Senate. In fact, their chances, I don't know if you know this, the chances have actually improved over the last couple of days, according to 538, who we are still standing. If they can do that, then they will be able to really fiddle around with the Supreme Court quite a lot. And the argument is that they can add more justices and as such overturn the conservative majority that they have there. And that would be an entirely appropriate thing to do, and we've already seen that there is no limit to how Machiavellian and dodgy the Republicans are willing to be when it comes to screwing with the Supreme Court. So really, the Democrats should be meeting like with like and saying, we're going to be packing the Supreme Court. And, if they want to be sneaky, maybe they won't mention it now, but we should at least, as progressives, be able to have confidence that they will be willing to consider it when they do actually have the power. Do you think they're going to do that, Luke?
Well, that is the question, and I suppose we'll find out in the new year if those two things happen. But of course, what has to be taken into account as well is public support. So is there support for this move, Michael?
It's funny you mention that, because I saw recently, again from 538, but they're very good, and this is mostly to do with polling stuff, about how attitudes change to the Democrats being, I guess you'd say, forceful. And to be honest, I think it makes sense that some of the public and the base for the Democrats are used to the Democrats being very meek, and therefore when the Democrats do anything half as bad as Republicans, there is actually inevitably, I think, some pushback from the Democratic establishment. I mean, I always remember, you mentioned Ted Cruz before, but in 2016 when Trump got elected, Ted Cruz came out and said, this new Democratic legislature will be the most obstructionist legislature in the history of Congress. He basically just came out and said that up front before they had even done anything. So the point is the Republicans know this, and they like to frame it so that already people are thinking that the Democrats are evil and are going too far. So of course when Democrats do something, people are predisposed to be like, the Democrats, can't you just be normal? Anyway, point being that when the Trump was impeached for, literally bribing a foreign government for his own personal gain, when Trump was impeached for that very minor thing, it's not getting a blowjob, there was actually a broad position against it. I do have a graphic up right now, and it is about the support or lack thereof for impeachment, and you can broadly see that the lack of support was in the low 50s and the support was in the high 30s for ages, until in late September Pelosi announced impeachment inquiry, and within about a week support had come out on top. So the point being that actually the public was against the idea of impeachment right up until the Democratic, establishment took the initiative and announced the impeachment. And it was literally just the announcement of it. And then ever since then, there was more support than lack of support for impeaching Trump. So what it shows is that right now, actually, and this is another graphic we've got up, you can see that there is not public support for stacking the court, that there is broad opposition from 46% total, from 30% of Dems oppose it, 35% of them support it. So in that case, Dems do actually support it overall, but then there is 35% not sure. Point being that it's all pretty much, 1/3 each. But there is strong evidence to suggest that if the Democrats did take the initiative and go for that thing and try to stack the court, then the public would fall in support, and actually shows that the relationship is that when the Democrats choose to take the initiative and choose to go on the offensive, the public actually comes around. Seems to be what we've seen with the Trump impeachment. And the concern is that the Democrats aren't going to take that message to heart and are instead going to continue to be the meek, shit, ineffectual party they've been quite consistently.
Yes.
Personified by Diane Feinstein.
Yes, so that is the worry, that Diane Feinstein is going to still be, her attitude towards politics is still going to be the dominant attitude that all Democrats have in the Senate, or the vast majority. As you mentioned before, Michael, this is an issue because if Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and pass all these great progressive laws that we're still skeptical they might do. But if, Biden does what he says, then what's to stop the Supreme Court, which is now a 6-3 conservative majority, from striking all that stuff down in 2023 whenever it reaches the Supreme Court, or 2024? There is every chance that's going to happen. So if the Democrats actually want to do anything, they're going to have to pack the courts, and it's 6-5 maybe, that might be good enough. But, if you really want to pack it, you might as well just go full out and go 6-7. But of course, as you mentioned, Feinstein, if her attitude is the attitude that remains the dominant one, then it's unlikely to happen. But there is hope. So do you want to talk now about Sheldon Whitehouse, who took a very different path to Dianne Feinstein in those Senate Judiciary hearings, the senator from Rhode Island?
Yes, so obviously I've seen quite a few. Obviously watched Ted Cruz, I've watched Dianne Feinstein, I've watched quite a few of these hearings because it is interesting. And this person called Sheldon Whitehouse, who, like you already said, senator for Rhode Island, basically came out and did a full-on expose on really going through where some of the money is coming from for the support for these Supreme Court justices, and basically showing how there is a lot of, I think he uses the term dark money, which basically means money where you don't really know where it's come from, that is used in securing these Supreme Court nominations for particular people based on the interests of special people. And he goes through and he kind of points out things like Roe v. Wade. He talks about gay marriage, but then he also goes to the fact there are companies that stand behind this, so corporations. Particularly, he talks about Obamacare and how there are corporations that obviously want to basically screw their employees with pre-existing conditions, and Obamacare means they can't do that. And then, of course, he talks about Coke and companies that are massive polluters, and how there are certain Supreme Court issues before the polluters. And he basically says that the Republicans and these businesses are putting huge amounts of money into this nomination of Amy Coney Barrett. He basically asks the obvious question, which is they wouldn't put in all these millions of dollars if they weren't going to get anything out of it. And what's impressive, I think, is how candid he is and how, on the offensive he is, that he's pretty much calling this out. And that is what we should see. And I think the reality is that most people who would see that, I think it's a shame lots of people aren't going to have seen him do this whole expose, but most people, I think, would see that, and they would be sympathetic to the Democrats. They would see that there is a serious issue going on. And of course, instead we get what Dianne Feinstein did instead, getting the big attention, which is a shame, because I do think, what we saw with Sheldon Whitehouse is a much more valuable thing for Democrats to be contributing to the political arena. So
there is hope, I guess, with somebody like Sheldon Whitehouse going forward. There is hope that maybe he and Bernie Sanders and Ed Markey, other senators, are going to try and push things in a direction to pack the courts, which again I stress is very much a necessity. Not just, of course, for whatever the Democrats are going to do in the future, but things like Medicaid and, of course, Roe v. Wade. And I think you can see the differences in how Democratic voters or supporters are viewing this situation with Amy Coney Barrett and packing the Supreme Court, and it is kind of radicalizing them. I will say that. I have noticed in the past few weeks, the average Dem, on Twitter at least, the average person who, really likes Joe Biden and thinks Bernie Sanders was mean to women or whatever, that kind of person really starting to be a bit more radicalized. And I want to take you through the Twitter account of Charlotte Clymer. Do you know who she is?
Oh, yes, I do know. It's very rare for you to mention a Twitter person. I know who they are, but I do know who Charlotte Clymer is.
Yes, so she was one of the people who really didn't like Bernie Sanders. And I just want to go through some of her tweets. So this is from 2018. The dude bros of the world are all about transparency, plus fighting conspiracies when it's their interests at stake. But the moment someone suggests transparency that's inconvenient to them, they turn into what they supposedly hate. Bravo, Senator Feinstein. And this was concerning Julian Assange. That's a great situation. This is from last year from her. No, I'm not ageist. I have full faith in Senator Feinstein to lead. Her age isn't a factor for me. I mean, I don't know. She also had another tweet about Senator Diane Feinstein, not doing anything illegal when it came to selling stocks just before the coronavirus hits the United States. Maybe not. I looked into that, and that's disputed. But her recent tweet was, "Well, I don't know about any of you, but my patience has definitely run out concerning Dianne Feinstein." So this is a very, normie, blue-tick liberal Democrat who didn't like Bernie, who's very involved with Biden, who, again, is being radicalized, and now she is against Dianne Feinstein. So there is hope, not just from Sheldon Whitehouse, but also from people like Clymer. She's just a representative. That they're finally beginning to see, oh my God, we need people who are actually going to fight the Republicans. Otherwise, we're going to have a wave of judicial decisions go against us, and all of us, are going to be fucked, basically. And that's the hope, at least. But
and also, I mean, just an effective opposition is good for a democracy. And I know that it's hard to imagine anyone in America at this point, based on their shitty system, cares about what makes an effective democracy. I mean, look at how it's all different shades of screwed up. But yeah, an effective opposition actually will make the country overall better, regardless of which side you support, as long as you have a degree of integrity, which Republicans don't. So whatever.
There's also hope, by the way, as well, from a organization known as NARAL, or NARAL. I don't know if it's an acronym.
I've heard of NARAL, but I don't really know what they do.
Well, they are a pro-choice organization.
Ah, yes.
Yes. So
I did hear about this.
Yeah, so the president of that organization, Hogue, that's their name, in a statement on Friday called for a new committee leader because Feinstein had, quote, offered an appearance of credibility to the proceedings that is wildly out of step with the American people. It's time for Senator Feinstein to step down from her leadership position on the Senate Judiciary Committee. So they just want her to step down from that position. She's the lead Democrat, which would be a massive thing to happen, said Brian Fallon, director of the liberal group Demand Justice, which says it's spending $10 million to oppose the Barrett nomination. If she won't, her colleagues need to intervene. The question is, will her colleagues? Well, it looks unlikely, according to this article in the LA Times, because Dianne Feinstein would be the first female head of the Senate Judiciary Committee in American history, and basically, she was added after the Anita Hill debacle back in '91. She got on this committee because it was all men questioning Anita Hill, and so
including Joe Biden.
Yeah, including Joe Biden. Yes, God, time's a flat circle, isn't it? And so now we have a situation where she could remain on the Senate Judiciary Committee. She could be the top Democrat because she is a woman, even though the reason why people are calling for her to step down is she is not being vocal enough against the Republicans for nominating a Supreme Court justice who is going to take away rights from women. So, there is hope, but apparently, according to this Times article, things are probably unlikely to change in that regard. And if, the Democrats don't see Feinstein stepping down as a necessity, are they really going to see or have the political will to pack the courts, which is what they really need to do? And I think, the title of this video, Dianne Feinstein, is everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
I think that is going to remain the case. I don't think the party is going to change despite her performance this week.
No, yeah, basically that's it.
Yeah, very depressing, but there you go.
Do it! Just do it! Yes, you can!